They've got 2 chances to trade Jonathan Kuminga. It's this February and, in theory, the February after that. And again, what I know the Warriors really, really were against was the idea of losing the asset for nothing. Most importantly, what the Warriors now have is an incredibly movable contract that will be coveted by other teams around the league.
Yeah, we are, JK.
Yeah, Jonathan Kuminga will remain a Warrior, ... for now. Jonathan Kuminga and the Warriors have agreed to terms. They will not make it to deadline day, and it is not on the qualifying offer. Jonathan chooses, with a little extra money sprinkled in, a 2-year deal with a team option for year 2, which means it's really a 1+1. This is a 1-year guaranteed deal with a Warriors option for year 2 at $48.5 million. Year 1 is $23 million. I need to ask some people out there, maybe send some text messages here in a little bit. But my understanding is, in keeping that year 1 contract at $23 million, it does leave the Warriors some control over their 15th and final roster spot, which has been rumored to be ready for Seth Curry. Not Steph Curry, Seth Curry. And I was very hopeful that he is going to be on the team, and so we'll see. We'll see about that. JK Experience has finally got an answer. Both sides are in agreement that it is likely that come January, when eligible, Jonathan will be a part of trade discussions. So that doesn't change. But what does change, the threat of the qualifying offer and everybody being as angry as all get out, that's not going to happen. We also don't get the tension of the final day and the marching toward midnight Eastern tomorrow. We get training camp opening, and Jonathan Kuminga is on the team at $23 million this year. For me, and this isn't about, I don't want to do who won the deal, because I think that in the end, what I'm worried about is Warrior fans, and I think that this is as good of a conclusion as we can get right now. But I do want to say that I think the Warriors, in the end, did a great job here, because there were 2 things that they really, really were after, I think. One is control. That option needed to be a team option. It maximizes his trade value, and the Warriors were firm on that. And the second thing is, we know Joe Lacob has been out somewhat in the public saying it. The second thing is, they absolutely, unequivocally had to avoid the idea of losing Jonathan Kuminga for nothing. And this deal checks both of those boxes. So in the end, I think the Warriors, they did a good job in finding something that works for them in what was obviously a very challenging situation.
Yeah, and I think that Aaron Turner, the agent, did a great job. And I want to personally thank him up front and just say...
Why?
Because the deal got done today. If the deal got done yesterday was already an unbelievable bleep show of emotion and topics with Melvin and
the Niners loss.
And the Warriors media day.
Yeah.
I mean, 4 o'clock on a Tuesday where we're starting to put Jacksonville in the rear view. There's playoff baseball, but I can't even watch it because I'm so nauseous. And Buster Posey, he spent a day doing nothing. What they got, and I mentioned this to you last week or the week before, if I was Turner and Kuminga, this is what I would have aimed for, because at the very worst, and it's not the worst because you're going to get $48.5 million, but if the Warriors have you for a year, they don't trade you, and they pick up your option, and you have to play there for 2 years, and you don't get to cook, and you get what you get, which is sporadic minutes, you get $48.5 million, and at that point, you are unrestricted, and you can put the deuces up, and you're gone. But the reality of the situation is your $23 million, which is on the books now, is so covetous and tradable that you are likely to get dealt. And I'm just looking at the list. DeMar DeRozan makes 24.5. Kyle Kuzma is making 22. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is making 21.
Yep.
Marcus Smart's making the same. These are all guys on limited deals who are veterans, and we can play who fits the best later. But if you don't think Kuminga is the dude, there's a small list of guys who make about what he makes who you might like more than the way you like Kuminga.
Well, I know you love this reference. You know when Bob Barker on Price is Right used to do hole in one or two? Yeah, same thing here. They've got 2 chances to trade Jonathan Kuminga. It's this February, and in theory, the February after that, if it weren't to happen. And at that point, Jonathan would not just be a bendable contract at about $25 million. He would also be an expiring deal.
Or it could be a sign and trade at that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of options here. And again, what I know the Warriors really, really were against was the idea of losing the asset. I hate calling players assets, but losing the asset for nothing. And now this gives them, in theory, 2 winters, if needed, to find the right deal and help the current core of Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green. I'm sure the Warriors and Jonathan would probably want that this time around versus next time around. I think that there's a lot of room for feelings to come back up if you do that. But in theory, the Warriors keep the team option on a 2-year deal. Jonathan will make a lot of money. Hopefully he plays great and fits and all of that. But that's kind of for another day and a whole nother month and a whole nother life, quite frankly. Most importantly, what the Warriors now have is an incredibly movable contract that will be coveted by other teams around the league.
Yeah, especially if you're a team that wanted him before. And I mentioned DeMar DeRozan, who's making just a tick more, and he's got a 2-year deal. So if you're in this 2-year Steph Curry window, I don't know how much you think DeMar DeRozan fits because he's more of a high-volume scorer, but the dude can score. So if he is your 6th man and he's able to come in your backcourt and be a scorer, that might be somebody you could be interested in. Sacramento has already been open about liking Jonathan Kuminga. We heard the agent talk about B.J. Armstrong reaching out to them. B.J., of course, now working for Sacramento. So there are many of these dominoes that are going to fall, and much of this topic that we can get into down the road. But for now, if you want to talk about who won the deal, I think the Warriors won it in a slightly greater way because now they're almost guaranteed to not lose the asset for nothing. If they have him here for 2 years, and after 2 years they don't get anything for Kuminga, well, that's on the Warriors even more so than it would have been. But now they've got the control. They've got control of Kuminga. They can trade him in January. You mentioned they can trade him in July. They can trade him the following January. And they can do a number of different things to make sure they recoup something. Ideally, Kuminga plays great and you win the championship this year.
That'd be awesome. I mean,
that's what everyone's hoping for.
Listen, after everything that all of this has all been through, I kind of want to avoid the whole who won the deal thing. I get where you're coming from, but I just kind of want to know how people feel about the final answer, which we now have. Jonathan stays for now, 2-year deal, $48.5 million, team option for year 2. It's a 1-year guarantee at $23 million. It leaves room for the 15th roster spot. That might be Seth Curry. We'll see. But Warrior fans, how do you feel about the answer where we have arrived? So let's start with this. Here's what Steph said his message to Kuminga was.
Negotiations are hard. We all know that. The idea of everybody's situation is a little different. Everybody can come up with whatever narrative they want to. It's how business kind of goes. You know, some things are pretty straightforward, some things aren't. This is definitely in the aren't conversation or category. But when he comes and he's here, he should be a professional and do exactly what he expects to do and take advantage of his opportunities to help us win. Like everybody who's in the locker room, that's what you're committed to do. And so I don't have any concerns that he'll approach it that way. And that's what we expect.
Okay, I think that's the next important question. And I actually have a pretty high level of confidence on that, which is that this is kind of a deal that I would hope allows for, at least on the temporary sense, it allows for the locker room to stay okay. It allows for Jonathan to come in and be working for a team goal as opposed to an individual goal. Still have concerns. No question, because this is tough now. Let's not make it sound easy.
I have no concerns about that.
That's fine.
I mean, because Kuminga's never, in my eyes, he's never played like he has individual goals. And if he was on the qualifying offer, I would worry about that. But now that he's got this deal and he's making $23 million, I don't think that it does him any good to play in that fashion.
I would argue that, and I would bet you $1 billion that in a private room, Steve Kerr would tell you that he absolutely plays sometimes with individual goals in mind. That's the problem. That's the problem that they've had. And so now he's being paid, and they all know the agreement is to kind of kick the can down the road. But this doesn't change anything. Jonathan is not like, yay, I'm a Warriors now. Like, if Jonathan wanted to really be a Warrior, he'd have signed the 3-year deal. But he signed the 2-year deal. So I hear what you're saying. I think it's challenging because Jonathan is still going to be thinking about who he thinks he can be, maximizing his value. I don't blame him for these things. It's hard to achieve that in limited minutes on a team that wants you to maybe play in a little bit of a different fashion. It's challenging. I'm not saying it's not doable, but it's very challenging.